Morning yogi mums and mamas to be. I'm Emma from Becoming Mama Yoga, and today's talk is about miscarriage and my second one, which I just lost yesterday. And I don't have any yoga for today, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about it a little bit in the hope that maybe my story would bring some sort of solace to someone else in the situation and potentially give some good information on what we do in Australia when these things happen. So my first miscarriage was in October on the 9th. I lost a baby at 7 weeks and 3 days. And my second, like I said, was yesterday at 8 weeks and 2 days. And I can tell you it doesn't get any easier the more it happens. I can tell you that feelings of loss, feelings of rage, feelings of despair, they're all pretty normal. And I know things get better because I've done this before, and I know I will live again and love again and laugh again. And if you're in a similar situation, you will too. After my first miscarriage, I was pretty lost for a while and pretty broken, and I expect the same things pretty likely this time. But I guess, first of all, we're going to do this sort of stepwise. My own yoga instructor, he says that all the feelings just want to be felt. And so it's important to take the time to do that. And yesterday I just went and stood where my other little one is buried. And I just had a little chat. Believe it or not, sounds weird saying it, but I spoke to them of their sibling, who we also lost. And I stood and I felt all the feelings. And another thing my yoga instructor says, very wise person, he says that feelings are not who we are. And so all the feelings want to be felt and they need to be felt, but they're not us and our essence. And they pass. And in Sanskrit, in that language, apparently, there's just no real word for, or they don't explain emotions like we do in terms of I am angry or I am sad. They say anger attaches itself to you and sadness attaches itself, as though these things are external to us and they just attach for a while and then they go on their way too. And they might be back and they might not. And everyone's going to grieve their loss differently. And it's all perfectly normal, valid. Everything you feel is valid for whatever length of time it lasts. And so I'm working on feeling the feelings, on understanding that these feelings are attaching themselves to me now, but that they won't always be there, and that they come and go, and that ultimately I had no control over this situation. I had all the hope in the world and all the best intentions, and sometimes that just doesn't work out. And there's nothing we can do about it. And our mindset is the only thing we can control. And so I felt all the despair, and I'll keep feeling it, I'd say, on and off in waves. And I felt all the anger, the complete rage, really, that this was happening again. How could I lose another one? Losing one was impossible. What was losing two? But life is what it is, and death is part of life. And even if I wanted that baby to stay, just couldn't. And I may never have a reason for that. But things you can do. I spoke to some midwives at the hospital about what happens after a second miscarriage, and they've referred me to an early pregnancy assessment unit. They're not available in every hospital, but it's worth looking up and speaking to someone there, because they're there for emotional support, but they might also be able to help with whether there's testing available in your circumstances. I've been reading articles about like the Royal College of Obstetrics or something like that, saying that they used to only investigate after 3 losses. Now they'll investigate after 2. So those things might be available to you if you want them, and it's worth contacting either your local hospital or the nearest regional centre that has an early pregnancy assessment unit. Counselling, if that's what you need. Another technique I did go through in a preconception video is tapping. So you can just search that on YouTube. There's heaps of people that deal with tapping. It's also known as emotional freedom technique. And you just tap on various acupressure points. And it helps you to release some of the emotions that might be getting stored up inside. If you have miscarried, I hope that you are safe. I hope that you get all the help you need. I hope that you will give yourself lots of grace, lots of time to take out to feel all of the feelings, and to let them be, and then to let them go when you're ready. And I'm just trying to think if there's any other resources I can point you to, but I think that covers most of it. And no doubt you'll be Googling your own things to try to help you out. And so that's probably going to wrap us up for today. And I'm not sure when I'll be back, but I hope at some point that even if I don't ever have another baby, that maybe I'll teach some prenatal yoga. And I wish everybody well on their pregnancy journeys, whatever stage you're at. And for anyone who has experienced miscarriage, I'm really sorry for your loss. And I wish you all the best. Namaste, my friend. So I realised after I wrapped the last video up that I could tack this onto the end in case maybe my story helps anyone who hasn't been through this before. Maybe it's your first miscarriage, or maybe you're just not sure if it is or if it isn't yet, and maybe it won't be. There might still be hope in your situation, but I'll share my personal story of my 2 losses in the hope that it helps you and that it doesn't scare you. Basically, my first loss, I had some warning signs when I didn't get horrendously sick at 6 weeks. Not everybody gets sick at all. Some women honestly have no clue that they're even pregnant until they're, 20 weeks or so. That's halfway through a pregnancy. That can happen. You can have 0 symptoms and have a healthy baby. So I wasn't even that concerned, even though I'd had hyperemesis for 3 previous healthy babies. I held on to hope that this one was just different, because not every pregnancy has to be the same. I know a woman myself. I know one who had no symptoms at all for her first and then had hyperemesis in a different pregnancy. So there's no reason to lose hope just because of no symptoms. It's just the first thing that alerted me that something might be wrong. And so I did think that maybe it was because of the things I'd done pre-conception. I'd taken different supplements. I'd spoken with a naturopath. I'd had help from an aunt with my general health, and I thought maybe those things helped. Maybe whatever it was that I'd done differently was helping, and that's why I wasn't horrendously sick. In hindsight, a week later when I started spotting, I realised that part of me knew, even back then, that something was drastically wrong. But I did the human thing and I held on to hope. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Even now, even after 2 losses, hope is kind of all we have. Like, if you don't have hope, then it's a really long few weeks worth of waiting, or a long first trimester if your baby is healthy and is going to continue on in the pregnancy. So hope is important, and I think we should hold on to it anyway. So in that first time and in the second time as well, it was the same deal. There was no symptoms. I mean, I did start to get a little bit queasy with the second one, and like even a little bit of retching in the morning when I first woke up, but no actual vomiting. And I went, hey, this is great. I did even more preconception care. I had an integrative doctor this time, and he put me on some supplements after testing me for things and telling me I was an undermethylator and that I could take these supplements that would help with that. And I went, great, maybe this is a dream pregnancy that I just don't get sick for, because the doctor found something that helps my general health, and maybe it's also helping now. Maybe my body's just coping better. And that could have been the case. It wasn't for me, but it could be for you, even if you're having a different pregnancy to a previous one, or if this is your first pregnancy and you don't really have symptoms. It doesn't have to mean anything, but it can. And so my own story, back to that, I started spotting over a long weekend, as it happened both times. And so there wasn't a lot I could do. I couldn't get in for an ultrasound, I couldn't do anything like that. So I waited and I hoped and I meditated and I prayed and I did all sorts of things to try to hope that this baby was okay. I rested. I don't know. I sent lots of positive energy into my body in the hope that I could connect with this baby and that I could keep the baby here. And that's on both losses. I did those things. And it didn't help for me, but it did bring me some peace later to know that I had done everything I could to connect with my baby for as long as I could. And that's all I've got now. And I'm glad that I did it anyway, even if it didn't help. And maybe for someone else it could help. So, I mean, you've got nothing to lose by thinking positive, by meditating, by doing a little bit of gentle yoga if you're up for it, by resting, by loving, connecting in. So I'd definitely recommend all those things. But the spotting increased over a few days for both of these babies. And between that and the lack of symptoms, I was pretty confident that something was wrong, especially the second time, because it was following the same path as the first. And so I got a doctor to refer me for some HCG testing. So that's a blood test. They test the human chorionic gonadotrophin levels in your blood. It's a standard test to confirm pregnancy, but if they do it as a serial set of tests, they usually do that about 48 hours apart, they can tell how quickly the levels are rising. And depending on the stage of pregnancy, they might be doubling early on. From about 8 weeks, I think it is, they start to double every 96 hours instead of every 48, but they'd still be able to tell if the rise was enough to indicate a viable pregnancy. And I also got a referral for a dating scan, which again is a standard sort of thing that they tend to offer pregnant mums. It's up to you if you go and get a scan or not. I generally only get the scans if there's a reason to, and to me the reason is bleeding or pain. And a doctor had agreed with me that I didn't need to get a scan because I was so sure of my date. I didn't have to get a scan until that bleeding started, and then they recommended it. So I went in for the scan, and the first loss, I was meant to be 7 weeks and 1 day, and the baby was measuring 2 weeks behind that. And that was another big red flag to me. The baby did have a heartbeat, and I'd been told, and I'd looked up, that if you see a heartbeat, then you're much less likely to lose the baby. So again, the hope came into it that maybe the baby would be okay. But the sonographer did say that the rate was only just in the okay range. And he had said, and he would have meant it in the best possible way, that sometimes women are out with their dates and that this baby could be just fine and just earlier than I thought. And doctors said that to me too, about my blood testing, about my scans, both times. But I think they discount the fact that a mother knows when something's not right. And they want to hold on to hope too. They don't want to upset you when the baby could be fine. And so I don't think they did anything wrong with that, but I do kind of wish sometimes that the medical professionals wouldn't just completely discount a mother's innate knowledge, because it can teach us to discount it ourselves. And so while it doesn't help that much to lose hope in the face of a threatened miscarriage, I don't like the idea of women being taught not to trust their body and their innate way of knowing what is happening with their baby, because women need to be empowered to trust that they know best, and the mother does know. And anyway, soapbox hopping down, separate issue. So my spotting increased to full-on bleeding. By that time I knew that both of these babies were gone. They both followed exactly the same pattern. That may not happen in every miscarriage, it may be different patterns. Hold on to hope for as long as possible is probably my best advice, and think as positively as you can, because not all bleeding equals miscarriage. I had bled with my first, just a tiny bit of spotting just for a couple of days, and then it stopped. And I had bled more than that with my third, and they are both healthy kids. And so again, I hoped and hoped and hoped until there was too much bleeding, combined with the scan measuring 2 or more weeks behind, and the HCG levels by then weren't important to me, but the doctors wanted them to confirm, and so I did the testing anyway, and that confirmed that the levels were on their way down. So that's how I and the doctors knew. I knew before them, but I mean, it doesn't really matter what way around that is. It's just to tell you all that you have a lot of power, you have a lot of knowledge, and your fears should never be discounted. Even if there's nothing that can be done, you probably know more than the doctors do about your own body, and you should trust that. I do want to reiterate yet again that bleeding does not always mean miscarriage. I know plenty of women who have had even big bleeds, and they've been a thing called a subchorionic hematoma, where just a bit of a pocket of blood forms. They don't always know the reason why, but it can cause a fair bleed and the baby can still be okay. So there's still no real reason to lose hope until there is no baby, really. And I just hope that me sharing my story helps to ease the burden a little bit for some of you who might be in limbo. I was in limbo for about 5 days with the first and 6 with the second, and it's not a nice place to be. And there's all this wavering back and forwards between this hope and this, like, what if I'm wrong, and what if this baby is completely fine and I'm entering into like all this emotional roller coaster for nothing. And I wavered from that to complete despair and back again, and none of it really helps. But to know that it's normal, and to know that you're not alone, and that someone else has felt this, and your story may end differently to mine. Your baby might be fine, or it might not be, but whatever happens, You are doing your best. You are enough. It is not your fault. And you can survive this, whatever happens. And you are loved. You are light. You are joy. You will love again. And just lean on your support people. Talk to people. Talking about it does help. Even if you feel like no one else understands you and what you're going through, talk, because it helps you to release. Write it down if you can't talk. Whether you show it to anyone doesn't matter. Just writing it down can help to release some of the emotions that are being pent up inside. So with that, I think I am actually finished talking to you guys this morning, and I wish you all the very best, and I hope that none of you are going through the same thing as me, but if you are loved and you are not alone. Namaste.
In my haze of grief and loss at the time after my second loss, I realised that I never finished going through the healthcare options for miscarriage, and I just wanted to add this on to the end. So I know I spoke a little of the early pregnancy assessment unit at the start of the video, and then got waylaid discussing more of the emotional impact and processing. But I guess just to digress a little back into those options in case you're needing to know more, the early pregnancy assessment services are not always available at every hospital, like I mentioned. So you could go through your general practitioner, so a general doctor can help you to find some options, or you could go through your emergency department at the hospital and they can put you into the right service to get the care that you need. Now, most of the time, miscarriage is not actually considered a true emergency unless it is ectopic and threatened rupture or actual rupture. So ectopic is where the pregnancy implanted outside of the uterus, and that can be a very dangerous situation for the mother. It might cause extreme abdominal pain, usually sudden onset. It could cause sudden onset bleeding as well, or you could have it found at a scan. And in those cases, they usually want to go in for surgery fairly quickly to remove that pregnancy. And you'll probably present to emergency in the case of an acute onset of symptoms, or if it was a scan where they found it, they're probably going to refer you to talk to your doctor fairly quickly, and your doctor will point you in the right direction of where to seek help. So the rest of the time, say that you either had a missed miscarriage that was found at a scan, so that means there's no symptoms of the miscarriage at all. It's as though your body is still carrying on a pregnancy and it's just found at a scan. Or if you had started bleeding and had it investigated and it was found to be a miscarriage either by scan or by decreasing levels of HCG hormone in your blood, then you have multiple options. You can wait for a natural miscarriage to happen, and it will be sort of like a mini version of a labour where you will start cramping. It will probably feel a lot like period cramps to begin with. They may ramp up a little for a short amount of time. For me, it happened within sort of hours of the cramping starting. Then what I call baby and what the doctors call products of conception was lost, flushed out through my body, and usually that will be with some clots of blood, and it can be a significant amount of blood and it can look scary, but it would usually not last long before it settles to something more like a period. If there is a lot of blood and you are concerned, then ring your GP or go into emergency. So natural loss is one option. Otherwise, you have the option in some cases to have medication to speed it along. So if they have confirmed no heartbeat on a scan and maybe you're already bleeding, or they've confirmed decreasing levels of HCG like I mentioned, then there can be medications that can help speed along, I suppose, those contractions, the cramping, that will help expel those products of conception that no longer contain your baby. And I'm so, so sorry if this is happening for you. I know that indescribable pain and grief and suffering, but I just want you to know what options there are. So I'm going to keep talking about it, but you can turn the video off at any time that it's too confronting. So option 1 was natural loss, option 2 was medication, option 3 is what they call a DNC, a dilation and curettage. It is a procedure under general anaesthetic. They may not get you in the same day if they don't deem it to be an emergency. For one of my losses with a DNC, it was a miscarriage. It was picked up on a scan on a Friday and they did not get me in until the Monday, and I can say hands down that that was the worst weekend of my entire life, and I'm not exaggerating in any way. It was horrendous. It was my 3rd consecutive loss and I did not cope well, and I guess my learning out of that was try to do scans a little earlier in the week if you can, because had it been a Thursday, maybe I could have been booked in for the Friday. That aside, those are your 3 options: is the natural loss, the medication, or the DNC, or if it was an ectopic, you've probably been taken in for emergency surgery quite quickly. That's probably all that I need to add to this video, but if you'd like to, I mean, you wouldn't like to, of course, but if it helps you to know more about my story, I am going to put together another video. I'm now post 4 losses and 1 successful pregnancy. It was not without huge amounts of stress, but I did get there in the end, and I'm so grateful that I did. It doesn't erase the hurts of the past with the 4 losses, and so I'm just going to do one more separate video on sort of how the rest of my journey with all the miscarriages and then the successful pregnancy went, just in case it's any benefit to you. I am so, so sorry if you are needing this kind of support and watching this because you or a loved one is going through a miscarriage, and please seek all the help that you need and consider one-on-one therapy with a psychologist, particularly one who deals in women's health, particularly maternal health, because they are that much better at dealing with this sort of loss and pain. And you could also consider things like yoga, meditation, exercise, ceremonies or rituals that you could do to mark and grieve your loss. Lots of options out there, but just be kind to yourself throughout the whole process. It wasn't your fault and there was nothing you could have done, and I hope that you get answers if it's possible to find answers, and if not, I wish you well in dealing with that outcome as well, of no answers and of processing your pain. And if ever you would like to reach out for support directly to me, I am happy to talk to you. I have an email address on my website. I have a Facebook page. You can find me and talk to me. Talk to anyone. Talk to your partner. Talk to an aunt, a trusted friend, a psychologist. Just keep talking if you can, when you can, and be kind and gentle, and take as long as you need to process. Namaste.